Hello, everybody. My name is Troy Nelson, and here we are in the KEXP live room, and KEXP streams 24/7 all over the world, and we broadcast live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week here at KEXP 90.3 in Seattle. And I'm very excited. We have an old friend. You have been here many times before.
Been here many, many times before, and it's always so welcoming and wonderful to be here.
Always so happy to have you, and I'm talking about Will Sheff, and if you're all ready, take it away.
Yeah. This is a song, this is the title track off of the new record. It's entitled Nothing Special. It's once upon a time I rode with a friend of mine, side by side on the conqueror's route. We were set in our designs, we were wasted on white wine, and our fine satin jackets hung loose. We triumphed and we lost, but we knew at any cost there was treasure we'd claw our way to. And we'd know it by the gleam we had seen inside some dream that was beamed through our boyhood bedrooms when we were nothing special. In time I'll see my queen, gray-eyed and blazing jeans and a raven riding boot. I called from the moon with my $1,000 tune, but in airlessness my words diffuse. My friend, he failed and fought in a pattern he was caught, and his family they could not break through, and his love stood aside from the other room. She cried, she was shivering inside her sweatsuit. Was she nothing special? You're only of your time, and I'm certainly of mine. You and I, we stand accused. I can see some coming day, just a year or two away, when we'll wake to some wonderful news. You're opening your eyes, and the same old friendly lies can't disguise the terrible truth. Hard waves are gonna break, you'll be covering your face, but amazingly you'll make it through, 'cause you're nothing special. I'm stranded on the shore, and you're gone forevermore, and embraced at the baseline so deep. You were lost or I was cowed, but it doesn't matter now. We'll discuss it next time I'm asleep. Sit by the side so close, and I'll tell you all I know. I don't mind if you'd like to repeat. It's time to say it's done. I'm not getting what I want. When I've lost it, I'm finally free to be nothing special. silks and my silver rings I have sold. My friends along with me, and we make it to the sea. We've agreed to give back all our gold. song called The Spiral Season. It's the first track off the record, and it's about hearing the fireworks in the band and maybe some other things. Cloud girl blazes in a gale of laughter. I see her face and feel my heart beat faster. We steal a spaceship till we make it to the moon. I wake up angry on an earth still burning, horizon hazy where the leaves stopped turning. Her idle breathing dissipates all through the room. Here lies the world's whispered prince, destiny's dream wearing thin, lost at the edge of his pen, watching the ending begin. Okay, they took the boy away from old New Hampshire, but still he's feeling like a ceiling dancer. You could come over and he'd let you call the tune. Your whole soul steams forth in flower. We're servants to the theme of the passing hour, breathing in the dark of the hotel shower. No one's now 1, 2, 3. In the middle of upstream, swimming the everyday waterfall, on the sunlit trampoline, watching the clouds rise and the city fall, how the final light of sunset found you as it went out, singing in the submarine, kissing my brother on the surface now, getting money any means. Oh, can you feel it though it's coming round, and you can make a break or fade out of the rayless circling stream, or you can shake yourself awake into another dream. Nobody said it's gonna be like this time. No, it's ain't gonna be like this time ever again.
So good. This is Will Sheff, live here in the KEXP live room. Fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
That was really fun.
You got a lot of creative people in this band.
Yeah. Shall I go through and tally them all up?
Where'd you find these people?
Well, actually, Will Graefe and I, Will Graefe is the first one of these people that I found. I was living in New York, and things in my Austin version of Ockerville River, everybody could kind of tell it wasn't really gelling anymore, but nobody was really wanting to say it. And I was working on this thing that I thought was maybe going to be a solo record. So I asked a friend who I trusted, who is your favorite musician in all of New York City? And they said, this guy, Will Graefe. And not only that, he's like the nicest guy.
That helps.
So Will and I started talking, and I just discovered this very kindred spirit musically in terms of guitar.
Awesome.
So we started working together on Away. That was back in 2016. And eventually, Will and I started writing together along with Benjamin Lazar Davis, who plays on the new album. Mm-hmm. And we were working on stuff that I kind of assumed was Ockerville River, but I didn't really know what it was. I was just not really thinking about anything about what it was. You know what I mean? And Will was kind of the one who was like, you know what, this sounds like a Will Sheff record. It's kind of like the solo record we were trying to make back in 2016. So that was sort of the impetus for that. As I mentioned to you, I had moved out to Los Angeles, and I was at a party with some mutual friends for their film screening, and that's where I met Ross Chait, who's playing the drums.
Cool.
And he had grown up with Ockerville River, so it was this really cool. We had this really amazing conversation. I asked him to come aboard playing drums, and then Will had known Julian Cubillos from New York, from
Cool.
the New York days. And so he's brand spanking new, just started playing. This is his third gig with us, and he's already completely crushing it. So I feel, I don't know, I just seem to have been blessed in my life that really brilliant, talented musicians just seem to sort of float in the wind, and I can reach up and every now and then, and I'm lucky to grab a
Snag
really
a few.
brilliant person.
Yeah. Well, with the new solo record, I also just kind of assumed maybe you wanted to put it out under your own name to step out from under the umbrella of Ockerville River for a little bit.
Every time I try to describe this, it's a little bit like getting onto the therapist's couch, and it's a little bit like I don't fully know how to explain it because it's sort of intangible. But I guess it really boils down to, I mean, Ockerville River was a band that I wanted always to be like a band where everybody wrote songs and sang, because it was started out as my high school friends, back a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And it didn't really pan out that way, and it ended up sort of becoming this this name that I used to put out material that people started associating with like a specific sound. Mm-hmm. And at a certain point, 25 years in, I started to feel like I was constrained by this sort of idea that people had of me that was time-stamped at certain whenever albums they got into. And often my albums sound really completely different. So I kind of felt like I had to be everything to all people and nobody to myself. And I also felt a little bit like I was being held back from full adulthood a little bit. Not that anybody was doing that to me maliciously. No. It was just that I had created this beautiful cage for myself, and at a certain point, it felt like in order to grow, not just artistically, but personally, it was something that I felt like I just needed to kind of discard and kind of drop the pretense and just be me. But the ironic part is that it's the most collaborative thing that I've ever done. But I feel like, in a way, that also has to do with kind of shedding any idea about what anything has to be. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
I like that. Yeah. Absolutely. And I've been, marveling at your songwriting for so long, because it almost feels more impressionistic, if you will, like more than it's not always verse, chorus, bridge. It's very nonlinear and just kind of, it's like it just flows. And I like that approach.
Yeah, I guess I always am looking for. I love a really composed, brilliant work of a person thinking really at a high level. I like to hear that stuff, but it's when I sit down to try to write my own thing, I'm always trying to receive. You know what I mean? I'm always trying to receive some kind of some kind of current that's in the air, and tune into it. And create something that sort of surprises even me. You know, like that's when I feel really excited in the writing process, is when I'm a little startled by something. And kind of loosen it up. And I think that maybe to some degree comes from loving poetry and also like, you know, loving the sort of American trad stuff where it can be very square, but there's these sudden shifts in point of view. There's like oftentimes in, you know, like in a song like Wildwood Flower, there's like language that literally doesn't make sense because, you know, 200 years ago somebody heard it wrong and it sounded better than the original thing. So now we've been carrying that around. And it gets at some kind of weird mystery. That's, to me, is a real sweet spot.
Love that. So I wanted to do something with you here, if you don't mind. I'm going to mention some names or some titles, and I'm going to be curious to know what the first thing that comes to your mind is when I say it. So I'm just going to say things, and then if you elaborate on them just a little bit, each name. Okay, first off, the Incredible String Band.
That's so funny because that was really what I was about to talk about. The Incredible String Band, and I feel so funny when I bring them up because I don't know if you hear the influence on my band, and also they're so bound to the 60s. And, you know, I know some people listen to them and they hear this kind of like twee elf rock thing or something. But, you know, when I was a kid growing up on like, you know, Whitney Houston and Laura Branigan and Sheena Easton and stuff like that, and loving that stuff. And then getting into like whatever, I was just whatever's on the radio is fine with me, right? And then I was close friends. My family had some friends who were professional musicians, always kind of struggling, really brilliantly talented. And they were like, have you heard this band called the Incredible String Band? And it was like a completely different paradigm for what music could be for me, particularly Robin Williamson, one of the two writers, who would write these 9-minute songs that would very naturally morph into it was kind of like musical suites, but it never felt put on. It felt like it was just you were following it felt like he was receiving a transmission. You know, it felt like the songs were being dictated to him by God or something like that. It was very, it was a thing I didn't know you could do, casting a spell. You know what I mean? And I think that really, particularly some of the songs on those first records, even if I'm doing a big rocker like the last time or something, I'm always kind of like, what's the frequency I should be turning into, the cosmic thing? You know, where is it? Where can I find it? You know?
I love that you mentioned Laura Branigan. She has one of my favorite voices of all time.
Yeah.
It's so fantastic.
And self-control, not to do a tangent, but you know, I know that song, she's like, I live among the creatures of the night, and that's a metaphor for like being a party girl or something. But when you're a kid and you don't know about partying, you're just like, is she like a werewolf?
Yeah.
That's definitely what I thought that song.
And that song has kind of a darkness to it.
Yeah.
Right? You know, it's not like Gloria and all poppy. It was very cool. And that production on that song is amazing too. Okay, so here's another name for you. First thing that comes to your mind, Michael Hurley.
Oh, I love Michael Hurley so much. Michael Hurley, the first thing that comes to my mind is he's a model for a career. You know, this is just a guy, very little known, but he's been doing it forever. All his records sound pretty much the same, and they're all kind of equal in value. I don't really hear a drop-off ever. He's been doing his own thing, putting out his own records forever and ever and ever. And he has a quality that is, I always am really desperately seeking especially in indie rock. I hear it more and more these days, but it's just this very casual thing. I love the way he uses humor. I love the way he's kind of like raunchy. I love the way he's always undercutting himself, you know, like with a little bit of, just when things feel a little too sublime, he kind of like clowns around. And I really enjoy that quality of him. He's a very inspiring cat to me, yeah.
Awesome. Here's another name. Curious what comes to mind right away. The battleship, the USS Indiana.
Well, my grandfather, when he was a very young man, he enlisted in the Army and in the Navy. And he served in the Pacific Theater, World War II, on a battleship called the USS Indiana. He was a kid whose father had run away sort of on an elopement. They weren't in touch with their family. They were living in extreme rural poverty. He had really no confidence in himself. And suddenly he found himself half a world away on a battleship. And as it was common in those days, he was very quickly promoted I don't think due to any level of mastery, just because like they didn't have the guys, and so suddenly he was like, had a lot of people serving under him on this ship. He would fly these slingshot bombers, OS-2U Kingfisher planes that they would fly out and they would scout where they were going to go, and then they would have to find their way back, often in pitch black, just using sort of like the wind and the patterns of the waves to find their way back. He was a huge influence on me. He was just a very, he was an old soul. He was very wise. I don't know how he had stumbled upon it, but he seemed like an very enlightened being, And he, in the end of his life, when he was dying in hospice, I just so happened to be around a lot. And so I spent a lot of time by his bedside, and he wanted me to help write his memoirs for him. And so I was listening to him talk about these stories a lot. And as I was knowing that, every time I saw him, he was a little weaker, he would rally and then he would weaken and weaken. And he was also sort of slowly accepting that this was a one-way journey. And I wrote a song called Comes Indiana Through the Smoke about him and about that experience.
Yeah, it sounds like he had a huge impact on your life.
He was, there's a lot of, I feel very fraught about like being a man and what like it means to be a man and like all the crap and the bad stuff. And sometimes it's easy to lose sight of like a version of being a man that's like you can feel really proud of and you can hold on to. He really represented that to me.
Cool.
He was a special guy.
That's great. Lastly, the movie City Slickers.
My father he took a circuitous path to where he ended up. He was, his dad was a Ukrainian immigrant. His mom was an Italian immigrant. And they both had not gotten further than 5th grade. He was going to enter the priesthood. He was in the priesthood. And then he dropped out before becoming ordained, and he wanted to be like an avant-garde filmmaker, which is actually kind of insane for me to think about now, just to picture my dad as like Stan Brakhage or something like that. But he was really, really into doing that. And then he had a family, and he decided he needed to provide for his family. He became a school teacher. He taught classes in like theater of the absurd and existentialism and filmmaking. And then he realized, I got to feed my family. So he got into school administration, and he ended up sort of becoming one of the academic brass, like go out and talk to rich people, get them to give you some money for the school kind of guy. But I remember I would sort of talk about how my dad was a filmmaker because film was really important to me. And at one point somebody was like, "What's your dad's favorite film?" And this was the moment where I really inadvertently betrayed my father, because I was just thinking about how much he loved the movie City Slickers. And I think that they were expecting me to say like La Dolce Vita or something.
Right.
My dad still teases me about that a lot. I kind of like made him look bad. Nothing against Billy Crystal and the boys, But
Yeah, it's an entertaining film, and it was a huge hit,
Hey, man, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'd like to see Stan Brakhage's City Slickers. I seriously would like to see that, actually.
Totally. And final question for you. I've always been curious about this because you know how a lot of our musical heroes, they almost seem like mythical to us, and then if we ever do get to meet them, we're like, oh, they're human, they're like an actual person. To somebody like me who just sort of thinks of Rocky Erickson as this psychedelic, mythical, voice, one in a million voices, one in a billion voices, and just such a mythical psychedelic legend, what would you tell me he is like as a human being? He
was like that, actually. There's a lot of people out there, like, and I don't want to name names because I don't want to dispel the myth, but I'm friends with some legend mystery men, and they're, you get to know them and you're like, this is just an ordinary guy who's cultivated a mystique about himself. Rocky changed a lot of my assumptions about the nature of reality. He really is, his whole life story, which sounds too outrageous to be real, I can vouch it's very real. His whole world. It's like when you enter into his world, you walk into a movie that is very scary, actually, in a lot of ways. Rocky was on another plane. Rocky was, speaking of an antenna, Rocky was an antenna. And he was receiving transmissions some of which he didn't want to be receiving, and some of which made their way into some really beautifully harrowing and enlightening and inspiring art. He was the guy he seems to be. In addition to that, he was a very, very kind, sweet, good-hearted person. He was a really, really wonderful man. He had his demons like anybody, but he was just so guileless and lovely. And that really helped him and also hurt him in his life. Because I think when he was in the prison for the criminally insane, there were people who saw that and they looked out for him. This guy's special, don't mess with him. If you mess with this guy, you're going to have to answer to me. Also, I think sometimes there were people who were like, I want to keep I want to be the access to the magic. If you want to have the Rocky magic, I'm the guy you got to talk to. And sometimes he was like the ring of power. You know what I mean? Like some people just started to be like, I must have Rocky's magic for myself. And he didn't really have the ability to control how he was treated. It was really complex, but he was a magician. He was a medium. He was a really special dude. He really changed my life.
Yeah, almost gives new meaning to the word unique when it comes to describing someone's personality.
Yeah, I've never experienced anything like that. I felt like I was inside of a Tennessee Williams play or something like that when I was around him, and I saw him sort of do psychic type things. He was on a whole nother level of reality.
Not of this world.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, he really was.
That's amazing that you got to spend time and work with him and get to know him towards the end of his life.
It was a tremendous honor.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could have just quit my whole music
Yeah, you're
career.
like, I did it. I did it all.
And I was, at the time, I was very aware of that. I was stressed out because it was a lot of work, but I was also like, this is the only thing I basically needed to do with my life.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, thank you for everything that you've done with your life, Will. We've been fans of yours from day one, and please come back.
Yeah, I would love to. Thanks for all your support. I love being here. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. That was Will Sheff live here on KEXP Seattle.
Discover new music at listener-powered KEXP.org.